Let me chat for a minute while people are coming in, and introduce myself a little bit. I'll be repeating myself a lot probably as we go along. My name is Daria Sanford. Let me first of all start by telling you what I am not. I am not a special education teacher. I am not a para. I'm not a PT or an OT, if you know what those are. There's a lot of acronyms in this. What I am is a trainer, a teaching artist, and a 25-year veteran of the leadership program in New York City. I've done a lot of professional developments, but this is my first one on Zoom. So please bear with me as I deal with the technology. The other thing that I guess qualifies me to do this is I am the mother of a son with special needs. So my son, William, was diagnosed with autism at age 3, and he has received services through it's called the ASD Nest program in New York City from the age of, from kindergarten, and he's a senior in high school. He's going to go to college. He just got accepted to Macaulay Honors Program at CUNY. So thank you. So I know a lot from being in the world of it, but thank you. But for us today, what I want to do is do a little bit of a deep dive into what exactly disability services look like in New York State, and then also the kind of special needs or disabilities that we're most likely to encounter in our classrooms, and sort of some awareness. So what I'm hoping that you'll take away from this is that you will learn how at least one behavior from your students may be linked to a special need, and have one technique to help that student when you leave. So people are still entering, but I appreciate it. A lot of people are doing this already. If you could make sure you type in the chat your first and last name and your organization, that will help with our attendance. So if you have not done that yet, go ahead and do that now, just typing your first and last name in the chat. All right. I'm going to share my screen. And let's get going. Okay. So welcome everybody. Serving our students with special needs in the leadership program. Our first slide. How can we best understand and serve our students with special needs? A couple of quotes to start us off today. Number 1, everyone is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. And that's a quote from the genius Albert Einstein. And then there's another quote that you might have seen on a bumper sticker. It's been very popular. Attitudes are the real disability. Anybody want to, no pressure at all, but if you want to unmute yourself and reflect on either of those quotes, I would love to hear anybody's reactions to those?
I'll share.
Thank you.
I guess for me, I also have a son that has special needs. And I know in the beginning when he was diagnosed, I was looking for I would spend countless hours trying to find solutions to help fix him.
Yes.
And I realized with time that he had like amazing qualities and he had strengths that I really should like lean into and support. And I noticed that when I started to focus more on his strengths, his confidence started to shift. And he realized that he was capable of so much more because I always wasn't trying to just focus on like what he couldn't do. So in terms of the attitude, I agree with you. I feel that, or with the person who wrote the quote, I forgot who it was.
Yeah.
Attitudes definitely, shift the way you look at an ability.
Don't they?
Yeah.
And it's a journey that, once you're on, you become an expert in your own child, right? You know exactly what your own child needs. But that doesn't mean that we necessarily, as educators, are able to take that over to other students, right? So other behavior can still look very confusing when we see it in other students, not our kids. But thank you so much for noticing that focusing on strengths is always the way to go. And the more we can adopt a growth mindset about any of our students or our children, fantastic. All right. Thank you so much, guys. I am going to share the screen one more time. We're back to introduction and human barometer. So what I'd like to do now is to get an idea of where people are in their knowledge of special needs in classrooms. Whoops, that's going backwards. So what do we hope to get out of this workshop? And what I'd like to do now is give you a Jamboard tutorial, and then I'm going to send a link in the chat, and we're all going to get to be on the same Jamboard playing a fun game. So first of all, let me show you the Jamboard. Hang on just a sec. One thing I can absolutely promise you is that I will have serious technological issues during this meeting. Okay. So, can everybody see this Jamboard now?
I can see it.
You can see it?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So, if anybody has used Jamboard, you'll already know, but if you don't, can you see my cursor there in the middle?
Yeah.
And there's a yes over here and a no over here and a maybe under there.
Yep.
So what we're going to do is once I share the link for you, you will be able to be on this screen with us. Over here on the left, there are all these controls. The fourth one down is called a sticky note. So what I'd like you to do when you get the link, excuse me, is to go ahead and open up the sticky note. You can choose your color, whatever's your favorite color. I like pink. And then you write your name. It doesn't have to be capital, whatever you want. And you just hit save. And then, like magic, you're going to show up on the board. What I might ask you to do is then click it again and make it a little smaller because there are a lot of us today. Then once you have yourself up there, you're going to be able to kind of scoot yourself all around this screen in answers to some prompts that you're going to see and hear at the top of your Jamboard frame. So here we go. I am going to stop. Let's see. Let's go back here. I'm going to put this in the chat. So here we go. I have just put a Jamboard link in the chat. If you click on that, now I'm going to give you a sec because some people, oh, look, everyone's like flooding in already. I love it. Some folks may need to take a minute to upload Jamboard, which is totally fine. Take your time. Hey, Dante's in. Mildred's in. I want to go ahead and invite people to minimize it a little bit. If you can go click on the side of it. Thank you. Perfect. Perfecto. Danny's in. Awesome. Thanks for minimizing it a little bit. Looking awesome. Excellent. And also, folks, as we're playing with our Jamboard stickies, if you have just entered, please make sure that you also are writing your name, first, last name, and your organization in the chat. All right, this looks awesome, everybody. Whoops. Somebody cleared my my screen. Hold on one sec, guys. Okay. This is fun. Okay, so thanks. Yes, Danny is restoring my thing for me. Let's see here.
Yeah, I can put the text box back.
You put the text box. All right, so we have a yes, maybe a no. I'm just not sure what happened to everyone else's tags, because I think somebody went ahead and
No.
okay, folks. Well, this is going interestingly. So, you know what? We're just going to begin with what we have. I'm going to go ahead and say what I'm going to all of the prompts, and you can either move your guy around like that, or you can just go ahead and make a little X. But if you have your Post-it, let's go ahead, and the Post-it is down here. Great. Okay, so the first prompt, and I'm going to put it in my text box right up here. Is, do you like pizza? So if you're yes, you're going to go all the way to the left side. And if you're no, you're going to go all the way to the right side. And if you're kind of in the middle, oh yeah, we got a lot of pizza lovers. All right, excellent. Next question. I am friends with someone with a disability. Or special needs. There's a yes. There's some maybes, or I'm not sure, I don't know. Great, everyone take a little time. Excellent. All right. Next question. My favorite food is sushi. Oh, not a lot of sushi lovers in the crowd. All right, find your spot. Maybe you just like California roll. All right, next question. I know what FAPE stands for. I know what FAPE stands for. What does that mean? Okay, Amanda knows. Okay, good. We will learn. Next question. I have a family member with a disability. And again, you may not be sure what that even means. Just answer the best you can. Excellent. I like how spread out we all are across the board in this one. All right, and here's one that has nothing to do with special needs. The Yankees are the best. Yankees. Oh, people are rushing to know. Amanda, you can't take up the whole space. Minimize yourself. She's a big fan. All right, that was a polarizing one. Go Sox. That's a big no. Oh, someone's in Boston. Okay, and last one. I have encountered students with special needs in my classroom. Everybody's headed over to yes. All right. Danny's gotten really big all of a sudden. Awesome. All right, I'm gonna save that frame. And I want to stop sharing now. Everyone take a look where you all are. Almost everybody has said yes to that question, so I appreciate that. Let's stop the share and come back to the Zoom. Give yourselves a round of applause for dealing with the Jamboard. Part of the reason that I want to show you how to use the Jamboard is that this is a fantastic tool to use in our own Zoom classrooms. I've just learned, obviously, how to do it myself, And it's also wonderful because for so many of these kids that have auditory processing disorder or ADHD, executive functioning problems, one of the main tools that we always use is to add the audio and the visual at the same time. It can be so helpful for any of these kids to have a visual framework. So the way that I was typing the prompts as I was saying them on the Jamboard is one really effective strategy in dealing with kids with the special needs. Thanks so much, everybody. Does anyone have a comment? I saw a hand up. Stephanie, did you want to comment? Okay. Just want to make sure that we all have time for a comment. I can't move. I know. Sorry, everyone was very patient with that. All right, thanks so much, folks. And let's go ahead. And I'm going to now give you a lot of words, a lot of acronyms that you don't have to worry. There's no test, and you will also have the recording of this. Did I mention that we're recording these? I just wanted to make sure make sure you all know that these are recorded, so we can go back and look, and we can also have a copy of the PowerPoint if you'd like to go deeper into it. So now I'd like to share the screen again. And let's see here. Back to the PowerPoint. And sorry, folks, one moment. Danny, why can't I figure out how to share this again now?
You're trying to share your screen?
Yeah, I'm just trying to share my PowerPoint again.
Oh. When you click the share screen, does it show the PowerPoint?
Oh,
Doesn't?
You know what? I think I just closed it by accident. Hold on one second.
Because you can also, if you have too many windows open, go to the bottom right, and when you click share screen, it'll say show all windows.
Right.
So if it's not in that like first couple of rows, you might have to click to find it.
Let me just reopen it in my Drive. Okay, let's give that a go. Ah. Okay. There we go. All right. Thanks for your patience, folks. So, what are special needs? Special needs are defined as a disability that requires accommodation in a classroom. Disabilities are not always visible. a student can have more than one disability. And very important, a student does not have to be diagnosed with a disability to have special needs. So even those kids who are special needs adjacent, they're still going to exhibit the behaviors in your classroom that are going to need some attention. Next slide. So let's go back for just a minute to 1973. I highly recommend to you a Netflix documentary called Crip Camp. And I can send the link to it. Crip Camp is about a camp that was made for handicapped, disabled teenagers in the 70s. And out of this camp came an actual movement, a sit-in, where a whole bunch of people with different disabilities, in wheelchairs, or mental retardation, cerebral palsy, polio, spinal bifida, survivors literally kind of did a sit-in and a hunger strike until the San Francisco director of HEW, Hugh, was finally agreed to this Section 504. Section 504 said, no otherwise qualified individual with a disability in the United States shall solely by reason of her or his disability be excluded from the participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. So what does this mean for us? This means that this also became part of education. So Section 504, this means that everyone needs ramps, that everything needs to have Braille, that everything needs to have an adaptation for non-hearing people. And it also means that schools were then subject to the IDEA Act. So now we're in acronym world, right? Anytime you get into the special ed world, everything is suddenly an acronym, and it can be really confusing. But here's what we need to know in the basics. The IDEA Act, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, actually wasn't passed until much, much later. It had its seeds, it keeps getting ratified, but really it was as recently as the 90s, where finally the federal government said, hey, look, any kid is entitled to a FAPE. So here's this FAPE again, the free and appropriate public education. So that means that any kid who needs to learn in a different way is going to be able to get that accommodation in public schools. And they're going to get it in another acronym, LRE, least restrictive environment. So you want kids to be in the most mainstreamed place in school that they could be. So moving on, again, I'm going to move fairly quickly through this. Don't worry too much about it. You can always go back. So let's go real quick through the 13 categories of students that are covered under the IDEA Act, the Individuals with Disability Education Act. So number one, the specific learning disabilities, SLD, more acronyms. This is, as we're going to see down here, in 2018, 34% of students, who qualified did so under this category. So this is going to be your most of your special needs students that you're going to identify in the classroom. And there's Dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia. This is, dyslexia is when you switch around your letters and you can't read very well. Dysgraphia is when you have a hard time with your handwriting or small motor skills. And dyscalculia is when numbers are a soup to you. Then we're going to talk a little later about auditory processing disorder and nonverbal learning disability. We're going to come back to that. Here's the other, there's 13 in total, but these are the ones that we're going to focus on for today. So the other health impairment. So the umbrella term other health impairment covers conditions that limit a child's strength, energy, or alertness. And one example that we see a lot of is ADHD. So ADHD is going to impact attention and executive function. We're going to learn a lot more about executive function in a minute. Number 3 you see here is autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, which is a developmental disability. It covers a wide range of symptoms, but it mainly affects a child's social and communication skills. It can also impact behavior. And I know a lot about that because I have a son on the spectrum. Oops, sorry, keep going forward. All right, number 4, and this is the other one that we're going to see in our classrooms. So the mental health issues that fall under the emotional disturbance category, which include anxiety disorder, things like schizophrenia, bipolar, obsessive compulsive disorder, and depression. So this is also considered a disability, but again, a lot of children are going to suffer from emotional disturbances and not actually be diagnosed with an emotional disturbance. So we treat them just the same. They have special needs also. These I'm just going to give you a look at. I think we're less likely to encounter this kind of disability in our work with children, or else it's not going to be as pertinent to what we're trying to do in the schools. So there's a speech or language impairment, like a stutter or some bad sort of speech impediment, visual impairment, including blindness, deafness, hearing impairment, deaf blindness, an orthopedic impairment, which is anything that doesn't allow the student to walk normally. Intellectual disability, something like Down syndrome would fall under this, where the child can only learn a certain amount. And then traumatic brain injury, I mean, that's just horrible. Multiple disabilities is when lots of things are going on at the same time. So again, we're just going to kind of let that go because it's not important to us. Let's go back to the idea of FAPE, free and appropriate education. And students are entitled to the least restricted environment in which to learn. So here's this little pyramid, and the very top, I don't know if you can see it, it says Gen Ed. So that's the kids who get to be in general ed. And then you can see that there are different layers, with the bottom one being, homebound placement. Again, we're not going to take too long with that, just to give you an overview. All right, so returning to our students, the special needs that we encounter the most. And I think we're going to focus on auditory processing disorder, nonverbal learning disability, ADHD, ASD, anxiety, and depression. Bear with me just one moment. As I said, I'm throwing a lot of information at you, and we're going to stop and talk about it in a moment. All right. So what is auditory processing disorder? Basically, it makes it hard for a student to understand what people are saying. It is not related to hearing problems or intelligence, but it has to do with the fact that what people are hearing is coming in all scrambled. Okay. I'm just going to let you all read this quickly by yourself. Okay, great. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Again, don't worry if you're not catching everything, because we can always go back. So if you have trouble understanding what people are saying, here's what it looks like. You have a lot of trouble following spoken directions, especially ones where you're saying, okay, I want everyone to take out their notebook and then open it to the green page and then get a pen. That would sound like blah, 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 blah. So these are the kids that are going to be going, huh? What? Very easily distracted, trouble following a conversation, trouble remembering details, all of these things. Okay, so going back. Okay. Let's take a look at nonverbal learning disability. So, non-verbal learning disabilities. Many learning and thinking differences create social challenges. But these are the main symptoms of nonverbal learning disabilities. They affect a child's social skills, but not his speech or writing skills. I am going to rush through this a little bit, but I want to then parallel this with some of the things that we're also going to see with kids on the spectrum. It's very similar because these kids have trouble understanding communication that isn't verbal. So when a classmate says something in a teasing voice, a child with nonverbal learning disability may think it's serious and get offended. He may also laugh at something serious if the speaker is smiling a little. So not getting the subtle unspoken messages people send out makes it hard to form friendships and fit in with other kids. Again, we're going to scoot through this. Very similar to ASD. All right, let's take a quick look at ADHD. Okay. So this is a condition that's caused by differences in the brain. People with ADHD have trouble with focus, but some are also hyperactive and impulsive, especially true with kids and teens, right? Possibly 5 and 11, between 5 and 11%. So we notice that people with ADHD have a hard time with something called executive function. The big thing to remember is that this is not because they don't want to or because they're lazy. It's because it is something about how they are wired differently that causes them to behave in these ways that can be problematic in the classroom. I'm gonna keep on rocking through this. I promise that we're going to talk about it in a minute. All right, autism. People with autism, basically what we were talking about before, which was what we've already heard about kids who have trouble reading the social cues. And then we're going to talk a little more about sensory processing, communication. The other thing with autism is that you're going to have a lot of repetitive motions and repetitive sounds. So just like those nonverbal learning disabilities, they have a hard time figuring out sometimes emotion or puns or teasing, and just doing regular social interactions is not easy for them. Then we have this sensory processing, and we're going to have a whole nother slide about that because that's a huge part of dealing with special needs. So this is either kids who want a lot of sensory information or they don't want any. And you can want both at the same time, which is very confusing. And then we have the executive functioning. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. And then motor planning problems, passionate narrow interests, repetitive behaviors and movements, and a need for routine and consistency. So there's a lack of flexible thinking. And there is a lot of perseveration where they're going on and on about the same thing, whether it's Legos or toys or a Lego toy or a train set or trains in general, etc. Okay, phew, I've been talking for a long time. Let me stop sharing and come on back to you all. Thank you, Danny, for the Crip Camp link. So here I've just thrown a lot of stuff at you. I'd love to hear any responses, any questions, any reactions before we move on. All good? Thanks. Okay, awesome. All right, so moving on. Let's talk a little bit about executive functioning, because executive functioning is something that we're going to see with our ADHD students and our ASD students, somewhat with our anxiety and even depression students. Let's see what it means. Okay, so 3 areas of executive functioning that might be affected. Number 1, working memory. What is it? The ability to keep information in mind and then use it in some way. So it could be just as simple as remembering something that you did yesterday that you're supposed to apply to the skill that you're working on today, and it's like it's wiped clean every time. Number 2 in executive functioning is flexible thinking. And this is really hard for people with ADHD, people with OCD, and people with autism, which is the ability to think about something in more than one way, or to change the way they were thinking about something in midstream. It can really throw them off. And then number 3, really you see this quite a lot in ADHD, inhibitory control. What does that mean? That means that you don't have the ability to ignore distractions and resist temptation. So the kid that feels like they're going to call out in class, wants to call out in class, but knows that they shouldn't, so they don't, that piece is missing. So they just call out in class, right? They're just going to be the ones that are like, la, 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 or grabbing the snack from the other person's table, all of that sort of stuff. So let us now, I have given you a bazillion pieces of information. And what I'd like to do now is go into some breakout groups. It might be 3 minutes, it might be a tiny bit longer. And when we go into these groups, what I'd like you to do is choose somebody who's going to kind of write down what you all have come up with together. And what I'd like you to do is identify at least 3 challenging student behaviors that you have experienced that might be caused by poor executive functioning. So that means you don't remember stuff, you can't change your mind about things, or you have trouble inhibiting yourself. So let's stop share. I'm going to make, well, let's make like 8 breakout rooms.
Oh, how many people do you want in each room? Because I can do it real quick.
Oh, that would be awesome, Danny. I would say about 4 or 5.
Okay, awesome.
And remember, when you're in your rooms, if you can have somebody to write down, because when we come back, I want to share out the 3 different different behaviors that you all are going to share out with each other.
How much
Everyone
time?
cool?
I'm sorry. And how much time should I put in the breakout rooms?
I think that probably about 4 or 5 minutes.
Awesome. I'm going to open the rooms now, so you should receive a pop-up, and then you just click on the join room and you'll be whisked away to your magical breakout room.
Oh, Danny, thank you for helping me with this technology. Some people had a little issue hearing what was going on in the breakout rooms, and that's no problem at all. Even if you just spent the 5 minutes thinking for yourself about some of these behaviors that might have to do with executive functioning, I consider that a very worthwhile moment. So the scribes, what I'd like you to do now is go ahead and whatever, it doesn't really matter who starts, but if one of the scribes could unmute yourself and go ahead and just speak out one behavior that you identified.
So I was in group 10 with Samaya and Ruby, and I worked in a learning lab before. So I worked with a student who had conduct disorder.
Yes.
And students with conduct disorder also have executive functioning issues. So this student in particular, he didn't like a change in schedule or anything that went out of normal routine. So when his school would close due to COVID, or when his school would open back up after a COVID thing and he would have to leave the learning lab, he would get extremely frustrated, throw chairs. So he was cry that he didn't want to go back. So we just had to reassure him that he was going to a place that he knew and that he was safe, and that there will be a time where things go back to normal.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I mean, we're all this kid, right? In our head and inside, we all want to throw chairs and have tantrums because it's been a nightmare. But for these kids, they just don't have the inhibition to do it. Tantrums, throwing things, etc. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing out that behavior. Can anyone else give me, let's get a few more here. Someone would like to unmute themselves. And just let me check that you are seeing my whiteboard now.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Let's have another problematic behavior that might have to do with executive functioning.
So I was in breakout group number 7 with Mark, Carlos, and Melanie, and we were discussing the children's inability to ignore the outside distractions, and how that becomes then a distraction to the other children. And what you have to try to do is, refocus them and bring them back on task, and then it kind of takes everybody else off task. But finding ways to do that, is very hard, and it's just as frustrating for them too, because they can't pay attention, keep on
Of
task.
course. And then I don't know if you were talking specifically about in classroom learning or Zoom learning.
In classroom.
Okay, yes, absolutely. Extremely difficult. Okay, these are fantastic. Let me get a couple more that were sort of the most burning issues in your breakout groups. Another scribe who could unmute themselves and share out another behavior that was mentioned.
In my group, we discussed, well, in my personal experience, I currently have kindergarteners. So some of these kindergarteners, they don't keep their hands to themselves, in the sense that they're always hitting each other sometimes. I let them bring their toys sometimes to school as a form of, comfort, like a comfort thing. Sometimes I'll see that they get a little rough with each other. They'll take the toys from each other. They'll throw them. It's more of a really not keeping their hands to themselves.
Yeah.
Definitely having a lot of energy when I try to sit them down sometimes and tell them, okay, can we please take a seat? We're gonna learn this, or we're gonna do this, or we're having snack time. Sometimes they can't keep sometimes they can't keep themselves in their seats, and they're running around and they're jumping, and
yes.
So that's mostly it.
Absolutely. And, part of that is the age of kindergartners. And then part of it is probably that you are dealing with kids that either are somewhat on the spectrum or have some ADHD or have some sort of impulsivity control. Okay, awesome. Let's stop there. And I want to go over to my strategy section. And let's think of a few, let's brainstorm. I always feel like you all probably have the answers already. And I have a few answers too from my experience. So let's talk first of all about the student who is so frustrated by any change in schedule that they lose their stuff a little bit and become even violent at times. This is a classic ADHD and ASD symptom. Right off the bat, what's one thing that we can do to help this child know when things are going to change? Anyone have a suggestion?
What my partner and I did with this particular student was every day when they walked in, the schedule would already be on the board, and he would get a paper that had the schedule for the next coming days, like individually, so he knew what was coming up for him.
That is exactly what I would say, right? So if you have somebody who is really having a hard time with different schedule changes, the absolute best way to deal with it is to make it visual. And, we all know this is best practices for any students, but the visual cues are going to be absolutely key for this student. And I would also say that if you can make cues that are also nonverbal, so the visual cues, you can have it printed out in big, nice letters. And then if you can add a picture, a cartoon or a clip art or whatever, that will help the student see, okay, here's the new schedule. You can even, what a lot of people do is laminate the pictures and put them on Velcro and have a kind of a strip of Velcro. And that way you can rearrange that individual schedule for the child by just taking the Velcro and showing how that day is going to look or how that week is going to look. So that yes, absolutely. Keeping it super visual is the best way to deal with that kind of thing. Fantastic. Okay, let's go over to this distractions. What have you done to minimize the distractions in the classroom? Let me hear from a few people and then I will chime in.
I would say maybe noise canceling headset, or sitting them near you where you can like help them and redirect them when you notice that they are sidetracking.
Okay, great. So if you do have the technology to give the children, now this is very much, we're going to touch on sensory processing stuff in a moment, but if a child is really obviously affected by noise, a noise canceling headset is a fantastic thing. What if you don't have one, right? Then you can do something like, sometimes you can let the kid wear a hoodie, actually, because that can help them filter out the noise that's distracting them. That's a wonderful thing, a noise canceling headset. And then, yeah, seat the student near you for redirection. Okay, any other strategies that we do for getting those distractions out of the way?
Well, I haven't really had much experience dealing with special needs kids, but children in general get distracted easily. And like, I feel like there's ways where you can accommodate for both special needs and, you know, just children in general. So what I usually do when like the class gets easily distracted, especially like with the kindergartners, first graders, I usually like let them do like a little get their sillies out type of thing.
Excellent.
And you know, like sometimes I'll do, okay, let's do freeze dance, and you know, let them, you know, have their little 2 minutes to like, you know, get all their energy out. And then I would usually after that, I'll put on some calming like sounds and like have them sit down and just, you know, reflect breathing techniques, you know, just in and out breathing, inhales and exhales, and just calm down so that they can like redirect their attention to the classroom.
Awesome. I'm so glad that you said that, because that was going to be one of my strategies as well with the distractions. It's kind of like with the ADHD, with the hyperness, with the distractions, you can't fight it that much. You kind of have to go with it, which might mean that you stop everything and say, okay, everybody, we're going to do a quick round of freeze dance, or we're going to, you know, jump up and down at our desks for 2 minutes straight, whatever. Go ahead and take those breaks. Go ahead and break up the day with a lot of movement breaks. And then again, coming back to that calm breathing, I'd like to share one thing that I use a lot with the breathing techniques, which is the rose and candle. So you take an imaginary, stick or whatever it is. You can even hold a pen. And first you pretend it's a beautiful rose and you breathe in through your nose. And then it's a big birthday candle and you blow it out with your mouth, like. So that's a nice visual for getting the breathing back for kids. Okay, this is great. Now, in terms of impulse control about the toys and not keeping the hands through themselves, anybody have a strategy for that? And I think what's important here, and I want people to really connect with the idea that this isn't something that needs to be punished. It's a behavior modification for either your lesson or a modification or an accommodation for the student who has the special needs themselves, right? So what do you do with that one student? Let's say it's a an ADHD student who just keeps grabbing that other kid's toy? Like, what's the strategy that we can do besides yelling at him or her, or punishing her, or taking her away from the classroom? What's something else that we could do?
You could give them a fidget.
Fidget, of course. So I really liked that the teacher who said that they were able to bring toys in. I think it's a brilliant idea to let kids have something to hold on to in the classroom to keep their hands busy so that they're not busy with other kids, right? So you give kids a fidget, something to hold, something to squeeze, whatever, right? Fantastic. And another thing that can work very, very well is to just have the calm area in your room, right? A lot of people have a calm area that is not a punishment. It's not a timeout area. It might have a nice little beanbag chair. It might have like some other fidgets there. And if kids need to take a break and go into the calm area, you can have that set up in there. Any other suggestions before we move on to understanding a little bit about what sensory processing disorder looks like?
I have a thought.
Yeah, please.
So I was thinking that can be turned into like a teachable moment where you create a SEL lesson geared towards that kind of behavior and having them do some kind of act out scenario situations where they're not necessarily targeting that one student, but turning it into like a whole class lesson, because like, although that one student may display those kinds of behaviors, is also common in like kids in general. And so just use opportunity to just teach the whole class and make it fun, engaging, so that it's not seen as a punishment, but just like a learning behavior where you need to learn how to share things or learn how to keep your hands to yourself, instead of like just telling them, no, keep it to yourself. No, you're not supposed to take other people's things. Like use it as a way to, you know, expand on the idea.
I love that. I think that's brilliant. So you take it away, so you're not putting the heat on the one kid. You're making it about everybody. You're expressing that this is what the rule is, and then you can make it fun doing a role play. One thing that kids love is when you act like the kid that's acting bad, and they get to tell you how to make things right, you know, and they get to be the teacher, and that can be extremely useful as well. Okay, that is fantastic. Thank you so much for those, everybody. I'm going to stop sharing the whiteboard. Hey, Danny, did you get a picture of this whiteboard?
I don't, but this is recorded.
It's all recorded. Okay, so let me stop the share here, and we'll come back to the Zoom. This was brilliant. Thank you so much. I know that we are running out of time. This was a highly information-based, but I want to share one more thing about really what I want you all to do. What I want you, as I said at the beginning, I want you to go away and look at a behavior that you would have previously thought of as just something naughty or bad, or a child who's unwilling. And I want you to shift that to the idea that this child is unable to change their behavior because of their special need, and it's up to us to modify our behavior, right? So one more highly dense informational slide. Hold on one sec. Okay. So when we were talking about kids with ASD, ADHD, even kids with nonverbal learning stuff, and then also kids with anxiety and depression. Again, this is one of these things that really kind of is across all of them. As it says on the bottom, it doesn't have to be one or the other. Okay, can you see this stupid bar on here? How do I get rid of that? Sensory processing disorders, also called sensory integration disorders. So these are kids, there's definitely two kinds of student, but it doesn't have to be one or the other. They can have elements of both. So there's a student that is sensory seeking. Sensory seeking student, well, here's a great, one of the occupational therapists that work with my son gave me this great analogy for seeking sensory. If you like to put 4 pieces of gum in your mouth because you really like all the information of like a huge wad of chewing gum in your mouth, that's you being a sensory seeking person. You want feedback on your body all the time. So what does this look like in the classroom? This is a student who is sometimes really unaware of where they are in space. They can get too close to you, too close to other students. Again, this is maybe all 4-year-olds. By the time you are in a little bit older, 10 or 11, we want kids to be able to know where their personal space is. And that kid that just cannot figure out where they are in relation to other people is trying to figure it out with their body because they don't have enough information with other senses. They may seem clumsy or loud. This is the kid that really enjoys high impact play on the playground or even in class, sometimes to the point of being unsafe. Another thing, just like that chewing gum, a lot of these kids will have a thing where they want to have something in their mouth. They want to chew on something, they chew on their fidget. They want information sensorially. And what does it look like if you're a sensory avoiding student? You do not want to be touched. This is a common misperception about autism, that no autistic kids want to be touched. That is not true, because a lot of autistic kids are sensory seeking and they actually do want touch. Or sometimes they do and sometimes they can't stand it. So there's no way, like when I first was told my son was autistic, I said, but he hugs me all day. Like, how can he be autistic? Autistic kids don't like to be touched. That's not true at all. So we can't generalize that. This sensory avoiding student, we talked a little bit about that technique of noise canceling headphones or wearing a hoodie. You'll see kids with their hands over their ears. It's a big tell that they're trying to avoid the noise. They're startled or frightened by loud noises and bright lights. And a lot of people feel that way. They don't want to be in crowds or they don't want to be in loud places. The other part of sensory avoiding is that clothes can be a real issue. These are the kids that kind of tend to want to take off all their clothes in school because any tiny little scratchy, tight, uncomfortable thing in their clothes is just froze them, and that's all they can focus on. And they prefer to be in quieter environments away from crowds. So we are not going to have enough time to go back into another breakout room, but let's go ahead and if we can just share out in the group, what are some of another behavior that you've seen that has to do with a sensory issue, you think, in a child? And if you could be really specific, that would be helpful. Like, what was one thing that you encountered about sensory issues?
I saw on your slide that one of them was playing games where they well, in my experience, my kid throws himself on the floor. He'll throw himself against the walls. He'll throw himself against his other kids in the class. He likes to play very I'd say hands-on. I'm not gonna say violent because I don't allow them to be violent, but he definitely tries to he throws himself against the wall, throws himself on the floor.
Right.
Sometimes
he wants the impact, like the impact for him
Definitely.
is what's calming him down.
And it's kind of scary sometimes because I'll see him throw himself on the ground and he won't move, and I'll have to run over there, make sure he's okay, and he'll be totally fine. But it's like something he just likes to do.
Okay, here is what, for those kids that are out of control and want the sensory information, anything that is a weighted something that you can give to that kid. Their occupational therapists often have weighted blankets or little weighted lap vests. And sometimes it's just even a thing of like taking a little blanket or something. You can even take a blanket and maybe tie some water bottles or something in it, kind of put it on that kid so that they feel something heavy on them. This can be incredibly soothing for that sensory seeking child. Something that is heavy, or they're holding like even a heavy book or something on their lap, can really give them the information that they're craving and help them feel a lot calmer. Any other strategies for dealing with this sensory seeking kind of child before we move on?
I've had children undress themselves when they're using the bathroom.
Yeah.
And it's like, they're little, so they come out like, just in their underwear, and it's like, oh, I need to get dressed. And you're like, oh my God, like, why are you naked?
Why are you naked?
And like, I just find it like, if you don't know that it might be a sensory issue, you could perceive it as like, why is this child doing this? Like, is something
really
going on at home,
right.
or like something's
Right.
off?
Right. So how do we deal with that? The kid that doesn't want to wear clothes?
I mean, in my experience, I've just explained to them that I understand that he needs to do these things, but it's important that he gets himself dressed before he comes out the stall, because it's his private, his privacies, I tell him. And it's like, you don't want to expose yourself to anyone else and make them feel uncomfortable.
And I would definitely go back to the whiteboard that we had. Hold on just one sec. Let's also remember that for these kids, a kid like that, he may need a little kind of a cartoon, a little visual. It could be a cartoon of somebody coming out of the bathroom without the clothes on. And the other people in the class, here, I can draw one right now. So here he is, right? Ah, he's naked. And help, help. You can, however you want to do it, but my drawing is not very good. And then the other kids, come on, are like, oh no, whoopsie. Okay, hang on, my drawing is terrible. But the other kids can be really scared. Anyway, my drawing is not happening, but you understand, in general, you could, any way that you can make it visual for these kids is going to be much more helpful to them than trying to hear your voice over and over saying things. The definition of insanity is saying the same thing over and over and expecting people to do something different. Change it up to be visual. That's like the biggest takeaway that I want you to have from this. All right, my friends, so we have just a little bit of time left. I would like to invite you to go ahead and once again put your name and organization in the chat before you leave. And before we do that, here's an evaluation link. And even before we do that, let me see if we can do one more close out. So this is, Thank you for being patient with me, folks. Okay. So what I'd like to do is send another link in the chat. So this is a chat to the Mentimeter. And let me know if you see the Mentimeter. You should get a link and be able to click on it. And then the question is, what is one thing I will take away from this workshop? You can do more than one thing if you'd like, but let's see what happens with our Mentimeter. All right, good. I see a few things coming in. It could be a strategy. It could be and something about the history of special needs. It could be something about what sensory integration is or what executive functioning is. So I know everyone's doing a lot of different things, but make sure that when you do your eval that you're also throwing a word in the chat here in the Mentimeter so we can have a beautiful word cloud at the end. I'll share it again. There we go. Oh, thank you, Diana. Folks, did everybody see the Mentimeter link in the chat? Did you see it, Danny?
Yeah, it's in.
Okay, awesome. I think I might have just sent it to one person before.
Ah.
Okay, yeah.
You can also maybe share the results,
Yeah. Definitely. Right now I only have, it looks like I only have one word though.
Oh, okay.
Oh, very good. Oh, there we go. Beautiful. Can everyone see it? So let's, I just want to read out what people say, and it's kind of a working document here, so people are keeping it going. Executive functioning, all of the strategies, educational, hope, important, help students, different in disabilities, communication, reinforcement, patience, be aware and patient, carefully look at individual, mindfulness of needs, reinforcement, children are not bad, excellent, specifics. Alexa, stop. Sorry, I don't know why Alexa needs to talk. Important to help students, behaviors, educational, patience. I love it. Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody, for sharing out what you're taking away. And thank you for filling out the survey. And we have about 3 minutes. If there are any questions, I know that I gave you a lot of information today. Are there any other questions, insights, strategies that anyone would like to share? Thanks, Diana, you too. You can also throw them in the chat. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining. Thanks so much. Thank you. Thanks for joining, everybody. I really appreciate it, and your students really appreciate it too. You too. Thanks so much, y'all.